Hello YouTube, Librarian Larry here, back with another very interesting video. Today, two design documents from the original Toontown Online were shared from Toontown Online's development. They give us an idea on how Cog Buildings and Doodles were originally going to function. It turns out a lot of stuff was changed before Cog Buildings were added into the game, and a whole lot of features were cut from Doodles. So, let's take a dive into these documents and see what could have been. First, let's talk about Cog Buildings. This document contains information on how Cog Buildings were originally going to function, as well as some additional information about the cogs themselves. Originally, the name for the cogs were corporate, legal, social, and money. These were later changed to Sellbot, Cashbot, Lawbot, and Bossbot. Also, originally, only the first 5 tracks of a cog line would be roaming the streets. 6 and 7 would be reserved for Cog Buildings, and the 8th would only be for Cog HQ bosses, such as the foreman. This was later changed to allow the first 6 levels of a certain cog line to roam the streets, with the last 2 being reserved for buildings and Cog HQs. Also, according to this document, originally cogs would populate the streets by coming out of elevators that would rise out of the ground. This was later changed to have them come down from the sky with propellers. In addition to cogs functioning differently, it seems toon buildings might have as well. This document states that when entering a toon building, the player's view would immediately change to see a plaque stating who last rescued the building, with an option to go back to the street. This was later changed to allow toons to freely roam the toon buildings, and this also implies that originally shopkeepers might have not been involved in toon tasks, or at the very least, a lot less of them would have been than in the final game. Now let's talk about the cog buildings themselves. Originally, 80% of the cogs inside a cog building would have been from the same track as the building itself, while the other 20% would be other types of cogs. This means originally it was possible to find Sellbots in a Bossbot building, and vice versa. This was changed to make it so every cog matches the track for which the building is from, a change that is probably for the best. Originally, Cog Buildings would be a co-op experience only, meaning you would have to have at least 2 toons to be able to enter a building, making them impossible to solo. If a toon were to enter a cog building elevator by themselves, they would sit there and wait until another toon entered. Then the countdown would begin as it normally does. This was to encourage cooperative play, which is the backbone of Toontown as a game. Also, originally cog buildings were going to be a lot harder than they are now. If someone went sad within a building, the entire group was going to be ejected and would have to start the building over. This would make it so every person on the team is a valuable asset, and would encourage toons to be a lot more careful when playing in buildings. Another very interesting change was how buildings were supposed to function. They were always planned to be a series of battles in a row, but originally, in between battles, toons would have the option to trade, heal, and exit the building. Now, even though it's not encouraged, you are able to leave cog buildings in between floors through the use of your sticker book. But the options to trade and heal are both very interesting. Considering cog buildings are supposed to be a challenge, I doubt they would heal you for free, meaning this mechanic most likely would have allowed you to use toon-up gags outside of battle, something that is never seen in the final game. As for the trading option, this really caught me off guard. Considering how casually it is mentioned, I could only assume trading was going to be a core mechanic in Toontown, most likely outlined in detail in a different document. It's hard to say what the trading mechanic would entail, but based off the fact that it was available in buildings, I could only assume it would allow you to trade gags with other players. This brings up more questions than answers, such as what happens if you try to trade a gag for a gag that you don't own? And can you trade a level 1 gag for something like a level 6? Or do trades need to be of equal value? I don't have the answers, but after seeing this mentioned, I will be doing some research and hopefully be finding something out. Now that's everything of note for Cog Buildings, but we still have Doodles to talk about, and let's just say there's a lot to talk about. The base update for Doodles outlined here is essentially the same one we got in game, but they also talk about a planned Doodle expansion that would have added a lot of cool features to them. So let's talk about that. One feature the update planned on adding were Doodle eggs. The document says that new toons would get an egg instead of a full Doodle. The egg would be stored inside an incubator inside the toon's house, and the toon would need to take care of it until it hatches into a full Doodle. The incubator's temperature would need to be adjusted by the player to make sure the egg is happy, and the player would need to manually rock the egg, talk to the egg, and pet the egg. Toons would have also been able to buy toys for the egg, like stuffed animals and blankets, to make it happy. Another feature planned was the addition of clothes for Doodles. Toons would be able to customize their Doodle with different hats and shoes. In addition to that, dog houses, or I guess in this case Doodle houses, would have been an estate item that Doodles could interact with. They also planned on adding new types of food for Doodles to eat, so they wouldn't only eat jelly beans. Another very interesting mechanic would have been Doodle memories. Doodles would have been able to remember things, such as a toon who was extra nice to them, or extra mean to them, and react accordingly when they are near that toon. This would give extra incentive to treat your Doodle nicely and not ignore them. Another mechanic that was planned for this update would have changed the way Doodles functioned in battle. Originally, they were going to be used to save a toon that was about to go sad, kind of like a revive system in other games. The chances of being revived would have been increased depending on how much you trained your Doodle. This definitely would have made Doodles a lot more viable in battle, but probably would make them a bit overpowered, so it makes sense why this was changed. Another really cool feature that was planned for this expansion was the addition of pet minigames that could be played in the estate. One of these games would have been Fetch, which most likely would have just been an animation of your Doodle catching a frisbee that your toon throws. That being said, there are some other minigames planned that seem to be a lot more fleshed out. One of these was called Pet Golf, where Doodles would transform into oversized golf balls, and then toons would shoot them out of a cannon and influence where they land using the arrow keys. Once landed, toons would be able to fling the pet ball towards the hole using an interface similar to fishing. Another minigame with a large subset of minigames associated with it was called Pet Hop. Doodles would transform into large bouncy spears that toons can ride on top of, bouncing around the estate. Toons would only be able to influence the direction and speed of the Doodle when it lands, and they can knock off other toons by landing on them. There was a series of minigames planned for this mechanic, such as Capture the Flag, King of the Hill, Tag, Joust, Halo Race, and World Ball. Finally, the biggest scrap part of this plan update was the addition of an area where toons can bring their Doodles out for a walk. This would have been located outside the normal playgrounds in a special area like Goofy Speedway, and would allow toons to interact with Doodles that weren't theirs. Now, we actually already knew about this, since at a Toonfest panel a few years ago, a TTO dev actually mentioned a Doodle Park that was planned, but that no development had actually been done for it. So that's just about everything that was included in these documents. If you want to read them for yourselves, I'll be leaving the link to them in the description below. I would definitely recommend checking them out because they provide a really cool insight into the features that would have been in Toontown Online, and also give an insight on the thought process as these features are being developed and changed to make it into the final game. So what do you guys think of all this? Personally, I think all the Doodle features that were cut would have been amazing, and I would love to see them in TTR or some other private server one day. And as for the Cog building changes, I personally kind of like the ones that we got in the final game better, but this other alternative Cog building system would have been an interesting thing to see. So what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Also, be sure to subscribe for some more Toontastic videos coming soon, and I will see you guys next time.